of as a shootout, but it really isn't. We are three developers interested in all kinds of IDEs, and we just want to simply present each of them to you because it seems that most developers know one IDE very well, and a second IDE reasonably, and a third one not at all. So what we want to do is just show you all three IDEs, showing you the highlights of those IDEs without really comparing them, because each of them have different things that they focus on. They have different focus points, as you'll see in our demos. This is primarily demo-oriented, so we'll each start with one slide to provide a general context, and then there will be a demo where you will see the main features highlighted, and then we'll finish each demo with a slide to recap what has been covered. And hopefully we can leave some time at the end for discussion and questions that you may have. So each of us get about 10, 11, 12 minutes, and then we switch over to the next. And hopefully at the end you'll have a good overview of what each of the IDEs provide. As each person starts, we'll introduce that person and take it from there.
Okay, there, I'm already live. So my name is Ken Walker, and I work on the Eclipse Orion project. So I'm also here to demonstrate a little bit about Eclipse proper, so the Eclipse IDE, which I have used for a really long time. I was part of the IBM virtual machine team, J9 team, and so we used Eclipse a lot for our development, C++ development, and Java development, of course. So what about Eclipse? Eclipse is actually, the foundation is 10 years old 2 days ago, so it's been around for quite a long time. It's one of the very most successful open source projects that was started by IBM, actually. And, but there's a lot of contributors into the Eclipse Foundation, and it's a really large ecosystem of plugins. All these different IDEs have some sort of plugin model and an extension model, and Eclipse is no different. So, very large set of plugins that people can use. When you go to Eclipse and you want to download the IDE, it's not like you can get an IDE with everything in it, or you can just kind of handpick what you're going to work on. If you're going to work on JavaScript, or you're going to work on C, or you're going to work on Java, plugin development for Eclipse, they have quite a few, like 20 or so different bundled plugins, or you can kind of pick and choose what you want. And once you take one of those downloads, you can actually add all the other stuff in after the fact if you know you're going to do that type of development. So let's start and just trying to look at a file here. And, oh, sorry, that's Orion. Oh, my mistake. So here's Eclipse. Oops, I guess it's not the right size. Well, that's good enough. Okay, a little bit shrunk from what I planned, but. So I'm just going to focus on a bit of the stuff inside the editor and some of the helpful things that would get you going inside Eclipse. One of the most important things to learn is one shortcut, at least on a Mac, it's Command 3. And this is a quick access to basically all the built-in commands in Eclipse. So if it starts with toggle, or it starts with switch, or something like that, you can get to all the types of commands that are you can use inside of Eclipse, and the shortcut keys and everything like that. So this one quick key is kind of like the first thing to learn. And if you're like, oh, I don't know. As a matter of fact, for this talk, I was like, oh, they've got some new features, and I don't know how to use them. And one was toggle or a split editor, I think. So you can get to all the options on using the Eclipse keyboard shortcuts and the commands, or get to the configuration settings. I went to the font, so whoops, wrong shortcut. I went to the font settings here, so that just took me to the fonts setup for the window, so I could increase my font size. So that's really, really important as an Eclipse user is to learn that shortcut. So I've got like your basic SWT application. It's very, very small. It's got, we've got syntax highlighting. The editor itself has all the groovy things everyone would expect, you know, comment outlines, put them back. It's got a block edit mode. I was going to show a little bit later. Maybe I'll show it now. They finally, I think that bug's been open for 10 years, added split editors, so you can have top and bottom editors. Some people really, really need that, apparently. So that bug's finally fixed, and everyone applauded. And So what I was going to show was some of the interesting things about the Eclipse IDE that are kind of set it apart. And one is the fact that you can add code. So let me grab the shell here, sure. So button, push button. How about a push button? So you can see you've got all the content assist you need to help you go along with all the hovercraft help, we call it. So I've got an error there in button. It doesn't know what kind of button is. So it does have organized imports, and it's giving me the choice of what thing I want. I set my path up so that the SWT stuff was on top of the standard JDK, so it's offering me that as the first thing to fix for my imports. So the imports are all done. So if I run, oh, it's not even used yet, but so if I run that application, up in here you can set up your run configurations and all the parameters to send to the VM. Then I should get like, ooh, wow, button, exciting. So what do we do now? So you want to do like add a button listener or something, right? Add, what is it called? Key press? Can't remember. Key listener or something. Sure. So in here you can say, oh, I want a new key listener or something in here. And it'll automatically take that type and expand it into the parts that you want. So you can put that inside a variable or a new method or anything like that. But it's quite handy to do that here. When you run applications, the Eclipse compiler will have the ability to compile your code even if it's got errors. So if you have like a new method down here, string, get name or something, and I say, oh, I'll fill this in later. Too busy drinking beer at night, and I'll fix that later, right? And wow, it didn't give me an error. What did I do right? Then you can run that. And it says, hey, there's errors in this project. Do you want to still run it? And we go, oh, yeah, we can still do that. Right? And that's a really weird part of running. Oh, I see, that's what I did wrong. Whoops. Too many of those. Right? Is that better? Yeah, there we go. Okay, that's the error I wanted instead of the other one. I'll do that again. Proceed. And there we got our errors. So the nice thing about that is that if you have errors in your code, you can still run your application. You can debug those errors and change your code on the fly, and it recompiles those things while the debugger's open. And you can keep writing your code. As you go along, you can fill in details. I showed you the split editor. I didn't want to show too much because there's not very much time. We only have like 10 minutes. But the editor's very very capable editor. Lots of ways to view your code. Lots of shortcut keys for navigating into where the code lives. So where's the shell here? So a display or a shell or something. Let's go view that. Lots of ways to navigate around between hierarchies of classes or where definitions, senders, implementers, that type of thing. So probably running out of time. So what I'm going to go back is to the slides here. So incremental compilation is one big thing about the Eclipse environment. It lets you, continue your development, and sometimes you might have package errors or something like that where, you can work on those later, but the incremental compile and fault-tolerant compiler, it's a very fast compiler. The default distribution is based on a minimum distribution, but they also have more packages that you can either add on or download later. I noticed that the JDT beta for Java 8 is out, and they've got an incremental plan for matching the release candidates as they're coming from Oracle. And I put a little website here that's very useful for beginner and Eclipse tutorials. He's got other ones as well, but he really has good Eclipse tutorials, getting started, to shortcuts, how to get around here, how to do your first app, how to package an application in Eclipse. And he does it as a business, but he provides a lot of those tutorials for free on his website. So it's a really good way of learning some of the beginning parts of Eclipse. And I think we go to questions later. So.
right. Hello, everyone. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you are using IntelliJ or are fans of IntelliJ? Okay, 50%. Fine. All right. This is a shameless plug of me because I'm not actually involved in development of any IDEs, but I'm actually developing for the IDEs. I'm developing the product called JRebel. I think most of you know what it does. If you don't know, just come and ask me later. So I've been developing plugins for all the three platforms, but my favorite is still IntelliJ, so that's why I'm talking about it today. IntelliJ is a bit different from other IDEs in terms of how it handles the projects. So if you have tried going from Eclipse to IntelliJ, you probably have noticed this workspace modules thingy, which is weird, right? You don't open many projects within one window. You have a window per project normally. Technically, you can open many projects in one window, but normally you just don't do that. What the things that IntelliJ excels in is the analysis of the code. It understands the context very well. It understands different code bases within one project. Even if you cross-use different languages within one file, it can understand that and provide you all kind of facilities to develop more conveniently. And it also developers of IntelliJ have put a lot of effort into navigation so that you shouldn't use the mouse very much when using this IDE. Normally I'm showing, starting from the editor and starting to show more advanced features, but since we are cut off time, I think I would start like from backwards and show you some of the features, and if I have time I will go into the editor and show you some advanced stuff there. So let's switch it. So this is the default view normally that you will see when opening the IDE, and it looks like nothing is there, and even more, you can hide this navigation bar and be happy just with the editor, right? Very minimalistic, nothing disturbs you, and if you need this navigation, you can actually invoke it and, you know, browse the code right from this pop-up here, and actually, without navigating to the source code, see what's inside, right? So it's very convenient for navigation. It has very good features for developing not only Java code but also interacting with database, for instance. So you can browse the database and see what's inside, and basically get the full featured IDE for databases with autocompletes for SQL and so on. And it also has very good integrations for Spring, because how many of you are using Spring? Like 50%, I think, and the other half probably is using Java EE. So it has support for both of them, and it also provides good navigation on the project, specifically for Spring artifacts and Java EE artifacts. So, for instance, in here you can see it shows me the set of RESTful endpoints on Spring MVC, and I can get all the description and the full overview of my Spring MVC project. And basically the same for Java EE project as well. I can get the overview of CDI beans within my project, just EGB references and so on. Right, but very nifty feature of the Java EE integration is, for instance, the CDI thingy. In this example, you can see I have a servlet with an interface being injected into the class, and is the interface. I don't know what's the implementation. I could basically maybe this bean here on the left. I could click on this one and get the implementation, but I can also visually display what are the possible injection, or what is the dependency actually for my class here. So greeting interface is actually being assigned to a fancy greeting class here, right? We can do even more. for instance, I have a second bean. Let's do a conflicting dependency. So I have two greeting candidates within the injection, and the IDE will tell me that there is the conflict, and I can also see that in the diagram and navigate into that class and say that, okay, I want this one to be wet, right? So it's fixed. There are other features for this integration, but I will not go into those details. Let's go to more into the analysis features. So when you're browsing the code, one of the things you want to know, what you want from the IDE is to prevent stupid things, right? And suggest you that you have to fix something or do better. Not necessarily that it's a bug, but maybe it's just poorly written code. And in here you can see that it highlights me that, hey, you probably could simplify it, and I get some better code in my IDE. Also, one of the things you definitely do every day, searching for references, for instance. So I want to see where the variable is used, but I'm also interested within how this variable is propagated within the tree of calls. For instance, if I'm just looking for the references, I'm looking for local usages of this owner variable here, right? But if I want to see how this is, the variable is propagated, I could use data flow analysis from here forward on or backwards, where this method was called. So, for instance, if I'm searching for forward, I will see that in the calls, this owner variable was propagated further on into validate fields method, and it was used inside there, and so on. So it's very nice to see how the data is flowing through your code, and the same backwards. So data flow to here, right? And I can see that it was this method was invoked in two other locations, and it was this variable was passed as a parameter to those methods, right? So very nice feature to analyze your code. And if we talk about the editor, I think all the IDEs actually providing you the capabilities for auto-completion, live templates, some other auto-suggests, but in IntelliJ there are some nifty features. I don't know how much time I have. Can you tell me?
1 minute.
1 minute? Okay. Let's do it. So everybody knows that there is live templating capability. There are some very nice auto-completions that you don't just type the full name, you just type some arbitrary characters and getting the auto-completes. You are getting the auto-completes for the names. You can ask from the IDE, what can I assign there? If my... Interesting. Okay. New file. And then there are very nice auto-completion features that I didn't find in other IDEs, is that you can auto-complete in a short way, just typing one character from the object and the next character from the method name and get the auto-completion like this. Also, auto-completion for static methods, for instance, sorting something. I don't know which static method I would like to use. The IDE will suggest that there is a sort method in the arrays class or in the collections class and so on. I won't go into the other things since I don't have time. but I'm sure the IDEA users know about these completions, and the others might be interested to ask later. So I switch to IntelliJ.
Switching. Hey, and I'm completely on the screen as well. Okay, to start with some basic background. First of all, my name is Geert-Jan. I work on the NetBeans team. Some basic ideas and concepts underneath NetBeans that really drive the feature set. First of all, it's free. Secondly, it's open source. And there's a very strong focus in NetBeans on the out-of-the-box experience. So you click on the button, you download it, you install it, you start it up, and immediately you can do all the standard kinds of development that you want to do. There's a large plugin repository, but all the basic features are already there. So that's not just for Java SE development, but also for Java EE, and also from NetBeans 8 for the Raspberry Pi and other embedded devices. You can deploy directly from NetBeans to all of those different endpoints and technologies. It's got a very strong focus on supporting the latest Java specs, because initially it was the primary IDE used by Sun and now by Oracle. So it's really primarily the tools provider for those organizations. The key feature as a result is Java, and since the latest releases, there's also a strong focus on HTML5 and especially Angular. And I guess our most famous user is James Gosling. He says especially because of the integration with so many other tools and technologies that are built into it, as you'll see. So just some very basic coding, string name, you can copy a line up and down, you can move it around as you might expect. And you can also do block select and then make a change if the strings were to suddenly need to become an int. You can also either from a small pop-up create constructors and getters and setters and similar things, or just from the code completion. So I select from the code completion what I would like to have, with getters and setters, which is also very convenient. Also moving, you can move obviously a class member up and down, but then you can see now that we're going to end up with code that can't be compiled. So there's also a semantic moving. So now you can see that my class member is moving over other class members. So when I do this moving with page up and page down instead of up and down, I actually end up with compilable code after doing my move. So that's the first thing. Second thing to look at quickly is options. So options window is many various things, as you might imagine, that can be configured. In particular, in the Java section of formatting, you can configure the tabs and indents, the alignment, the braces, the wrapping, blank lines, spaces, comments, imports, naming. So if you have company-wide naming conventions for members of the class, you can specify prefixes and suffixes. You can also specify the order in which different parts of your classes are generated, which is first, static fields normally, but you can change that. If you have rules about braces, so all kinds of different rules you can put into this options window. There's also, and as there is for IntelliJ, a plugin for importing Eclipse formatting rules, which are available, which you can export from Eclipse as an XML file, and you can then import into IntelliJ and into NetBeans and use them to do your formatting. Something else maybe to mention is you can configure the layout of the windows. So you can see right now the tabs are at the top. So if you prefer the tabs at the bottom, you can change that. You can show the full path of the file. So there's a lot of. You can also show different colors for the different tabs of the. So each project will have a color for each tab. So all the similar projects will have the same kind of color. So you can easily distinguish between them. Setting bookmarks. So I guess this is something. So here I have two bookmarks. You can toggle between them, but there's also a bookmarks window, so you can create a view across your code base. You can rename these and give detailed information, and then jump from the one to the other one. What's quite nice about NetBeans is that there are distinct views. So there's a logical view showing all the projects, but there's a files view showing you what's, for example, the build folder. You don't normally work directly with the build folder, so it's generated and only visible in the files window. There is also a favorites window, which is basically a file explorer. So anywhere on disk you can point to a folder and include it here and browse it in there. There's a services window where you can see all your databases and all your servers listed, your Maven repositories. Cloud, you can point to Oracle Cloud or Amazon Beanstalk. You can register out of the box all these servers, and the Wildfly server plugin is provided by the Red Hat. But for the rest, these are all out of the box available with NetBeans when you install it. Something else to quickly look at is code analysis. So let's take some class here. Let's take this customer controller, for example. Just pop it open. And we can say here, find usages, and then see where that class is used across our code base, including in our faceless files. So cross file format search is done to see all the usages, and you can jump into those and see what's going on there. You can also use a bunch of other analysis tools, including one thing you can do is there are predefined configurations for different JDKs. So let's say we want to migrate to JDK 8. And what does that mean? You can see what's been selected is use functional operations, and also selected is lambda expressions. So here's convert to try with resources. So let's say convert to lambda expressions. Okay. So if then you choose a scope, can be all projects or the current project or a particular package or class. You inspect, and what needs to happen is you need to have specified that the that JDK 8 is actually being used by this particular project. So here we can see libraries. So here I have selected JDK 8, and here I have also specified that I'm using Java 8. So in this particular project, I can do my search. Oops, not defined, but inspect and transform, and inspect. And now you see all the places where you could use functional operations. So here we have a for loop with an if inside of it, and we can say, okay, use functional operations. So now we get the stream, we get the filter is used, and we can also fine tune this further. And for example, use elements in a class, or we can decide that we want to use member references where that's applicable. This can all be converted too. So Maven support is really good. Any project that has a PUM file, so any folder on disk with a PUM file is automatically treated as a Maven project. So there's nothing that needs to be done. You just open it, and there's a graph view, which you can change to different layouts, and then print out this nice graph view and send it to your manager to prove how complicated the work is that you're doing. So you can literally export this image, and then you get a nice image. So this is literally just a folder with a PUM file. That's all that it takes for NetBeans to recognize it. And NetBeans uses the PUM file. So here it is in this folder. Uses the PUM file as the basis for the project system. There's nothing in this project that is NetBeans specific. It's just a native folder with a PUM file. Okay, so switching from other IDEs, you can very easily go to the keymap folder, and if you're familiar with keyboard shortcuts from Eclipse or IntelliJ or Emacs, you can switch to those. Can be done, and you can also built in is support for Git and for Subversion and for Mercurial that you can use immediately. There's a profiler, a debugger. The final thing I want to show is the HTML5 support. So here, normally if you use Angular, you go to an online repository, you find the Angular template, and you download it. Instead, it's all included here. And so we have the Angular template built into, actually pointing to the online repository where the template is found. And there's also some very nice code completion and similar features. So here's my controller from the template. So I receive a scope. Here's the scope. And let's say scope all beers equals, and then we pass in our JSON. So let's say brand is something, Heineken price is something, price is 20, and so on. So we have a whole bunch of these. In our partial, for example, what we can do here is, of course, there's lots of support for HTML built in. So let's say we have here our ng-repeat, and also documentation for Angular is built in, ng-repeat, and so beer in all beers. And if you type in between here XP, and you get the expression. So beer, and well, the idea is that you see in here now the list of the controllers. So there's just a typo I've made somewhere. But the idea is that the code completion from here shows you the content from the JSON files. And when you deploy such a file or such a project with HTML in it, as I'm doing right now, there's a plugin for NetBeans plugin that lets you switch between different resolutions, but also lets you click on items in the browser and see where those are defined back in the IDE. And vice versa. So now you can see I'm hovering at the bottom there. I'll make this a bit smaller. And let's see if we can fit everything in. Okay, it's going to be hard with this resolution. But anyway, so if I click on items, you can see where they're found in the IDE and vice versa. And now I can also, I'll just put this on top. How about that? Almost on top. Okay, so here is our image I've selected. If I move I'm just pressing the up arrow key on my keyboard, and I can see that I'm actually changing the items live in the browser. So this is, I haven't pressed save at all yet. It's just a quick tweaking you can do to your deployed HTML5 application. So just to wrap up, I guess I've covered all the main Java HTML type features. It's open source and free. Very strong focus on doing development out of the box without a treasure hunt for features. It always supports the latest Java technologies. It's focused primarily on the Java editor, and it's got easy integration, and increasingly so, especially for Angular in HTML5, JavaScript, CSS. So we have officially 1 minute left, but we started about 10 minutes late. So we're hoping that you have some questions for us, and we can have some discussion about the different IDEs. Are there any questions? Yes?
I have a question, whether you have tried to enumerate what is the most important for users, according to your experience. So just top 10 features. If you would like to create a new IDE which outcompete all of this, so which should be those features?
Well, there's everything, right?
I think it depends on the focus of the development. Well, for IntelliJ, I guess the editor and the analysis features are the most valuable, because all the rest features of it actually build on top of the analysis and the indexing within the IDE.
I think NetBeans has a very strong focus on the Java editor as well, but in addition there's a focus on generating code. So, for example, pointing to a database and generating all your JPA entity classes, and really leveraging specifications so that through convention over configuration, tools can actually create all the artifacts for different technologies for you. So it's not just the Java editor focus, but also the artifact generation that NetBeans focuses on.
And I think for Eclipse is the compiler and the work that's done in the JDT core area, that lots of projects leverage that work, and fast compiler and incremental compiler. Eclipse by itself, as I said, I'm looking at the downloads page for Eclipse, and it's kind of broken up into various segmented markets depending on what you're going to do. So it's, if you combine all those things, maybe it's got what you want, but looking at a lot of cross IDE features, there's room for everyone to kind of provide value add on top of just having a really good editor experience and refactoring code and stuff. So.
I'm just curious how many people here use more than one of these IDEs regularly? More like two or more? I think that's fairly common. You know, people don't choose. I mean, they're all there, so why not use all of them for the features for which they're best suited? Yes.
Out of these three editors, normally Java developers uses debugger a lot, and I know that Eclipse provides a very good debugger, but I haven't worked with debugger in NetBeans.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, which one is the best debugger? Because that is one of the, at least for me personally,
Yeah.
one selection criteria.
Well, you're not going to be surprised at our answers to that question, but I think in addition to debugging, the question is also profiling and finding bottlenecks and threading problems and things like that. And NetBeans, in addition to having a debugger, has a profiler, which is used for that. So I think it's more than debugging that you need to do when you're solving problems.
So personally, you feel that NetBeans is the best in overall debugging?
I can actually add to that because I've been debugging in all the IDEs, and I've been working on debugger integration for our product. And Eclipse and NetBeans debuggers, by features, by those small features, they are pretty equal. NetBeans is more UX friendly for me, but it's subjective. If we count out some very advanced things like suspending a single thread within the execution, then it would be IntelliJ for me from the usability point of view. But then there is no this, very advanced small features of the debugger. Right. It depends if you need this.
Yeah. I mean, the features and all of the comparing between them, they're all slightly different, and depending on which of those slight differences you like, that's the one that you're going to like the most. Yes.
What about the integration of Maven in the Eclipse? It seems it's a bit broken. I compare it with the NetBeans, that everything goes right away. With Eclipse, you need to kind of fight.
That was the never-ending story, especially for Java EE projects, as far as I know. You had to install 2 plugins, right, to actually get it working and deployed on the server, to play nicely with WTP and so on. But since Kepler, they are both integrated, but it's actually fixed since 4.3. Just lately, we had a nice discussion on one forum about the integration of Maven projects within the IDEs, and I especially did some experiments how it works, because NetBeans doesn't generate any additional artifacts to Maven projects. It just reads the POM file. Basically, if you like, the simplest example there is that you add a new dependency within the POM file, and it immediately appears in the project, and you can see the dependency in the class path with no delay. It's instant. Eclipse, there is a trick. Turn off the build automatically feature, and if you add the new dependency, it will add with a slight delay. But if you have this build automatically there, it will try to rebuild your workspace, and then you're probably waiting for some minutes, depending on the size of your project. And in IntelliJ, the experience is kind of mixed because it adds the dependency, if you add this dependency into the POM, in the background. So it doesn't block your IDE, it doesn't start building your project. It does everything in the background, it's still building. But there is a slight delay, and you just get all this into the class path, right? So regarding your question about the Maven integration in Eclipse, I would suggest just to upgrade to the latest version if possible, because before this latest builds, the integration is pretty broken. I agree.
And also, of course, the really nice thing about using Maven is then your project is usable across all the IDEs, and then because all the IDEs know Maven to some extent. So if that's another reason to use Maven.
That's what I was hoping, but
right.
As I said, I have a lot of issues with Eclipse.
Yeah.
It's broken and that's broken, and you need
Download the latest Eclipse or use JBoss tools. It has great integration for that.
Question on this JBoss. Actually, personally, if we use this JBoss Developer Studio, but they are, I think, built on an older version of Eclipse. The latest version of JBoss Studio has got, lower version of Eclipse if I'm not wrong.
It has integration for both, for the 3.8 branch and for 4.3 branch. So it depends which one you download.
A question in the back there.
What do you say about the coexistence of all these three IDEs in the same project? I'm a tool specialist providing currently Eclipse to our developers. What will happen with style and all check style things and if we introduce more IDEs? Will it be a big problem, or will it take no?
You should definitely experiment before committing to it. But one, as we mentioned, there is one nice thing about Eclipse is they have APIs for the formatting rules. So if you want to reuse the Eclipse formatting file, you can import it via plugin into IntelliJ and into NetBeans, and just whenever you save or format, that file will be used instead of the native settings in the IDE.
That's a central thing to think about, actually. So it's the most important one.
Use Sonar.
Well, it's too late after code is committed, and Sonar is too late for that. But basically, what you need is code formatting to be consistent within all the IDEs that are used within the team.
Is there one more question? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much for attending.
Not actually, you can get it from Sonar, but if you have the rules in Sonar, you can actually export it.